Hey everyone, Glenn here from Alt Egos. This is one of the outstanding episodes that we just didn't get around to editing in time for release 2 weeks ago, but it's our retrospective episode between myself and Joey as we reminisce on the first year of the Marvel Champions living card game and just sort of a throwback and set of recollections that we've both had on our experience with the game and our thoughts on the various elements that have been introduced to this unique and brand new living card game. Once again, sorry for the delay with getting these episodes out, and this can be considered sort of a bonus episode for this week, as I hope to be back on track with delivering our Rise of Red Skull review. We have Taskmaster and Zola recorded already, and so they'll come out I think this Wednesday and the following Wednesday. And then we'll have the Red Skull scenario coming out the week after that. Hopefully after that we can transition into some discussion around the heroes that we've yet to cover. So I think that currently includes Hawkeye, Spider-Woman, and Ant-Man. And then at some point we also do need to get around to covering both Kang and the modular sets that came with that set. Thanks again for your patience, and I hope you do enjoy our two Australians' thoughts on this living card game. And yeah, if you have enjoyed our reviews of the Rise of Red Skull, tune in again on Wednesday, November 18th, to listen to our thoughts and reviews on the Taskmaster scenario. Thanks heaps, guys. Welcome back, everyone, to Alter Egos. I'm your host, Glenn, and with me this week is Joey for a special retrospective episode of Marvel Champions over the past year. So, Joey, how's it going this afternoon?
Pretty good. It's been almost a year at this point, and by the time this comes out, it'll be just a little over a year since the game came out. So we thought it would be a good time to actually look back on what's happened since release.
Yeah, we get to look back at all the fun things, all the delays, all the hype into no product release. I'm kidding, of course. There's a lot of content that we've actually gotten over the year. In fact, I think if I look back historically, I think it's probably one of the biggest years for a new LCG that they've ever had. And on top of that, I think the fact that we had COVID-19 during this game's launch, the fact it still succeeded, at least according to what they seem to project publicly in terms of the reception and sales, data where everything's been allocated and out of stock, I would say that this is probably one of their strongest years for an LCG.
Yeah, and we did get, what was it, 8 packs before Rise of Red Skull, 1 pack after, and a deluxe box in the space of 1 year. So that's 10 packs across 12 months. That's close to one a month, although there was some oddities with a large number of them coming out in December last year if you weren't in Australia. Yeah,
they've kind of come in pockets, like collections, right? It's like I got my collection of Green Goblin, Wrecking Crew, and Thor all at once. Thank you very much.
And that was Green Goblin, like Captain America, and Miss Marvel came out December last year in America. But for us, we had to wait till January for the Captain America and Miss Marvel packs because global releases only matter if you're in the US. If you're outside of there, anywhere else in the globe, then it's not really a global release.
Yeah. There's been some rocky roads, but if you've been on the long-term roller coaster that is Fantasy Flight Games, you'll know that there are peaks and valleys,
it's
and
normally
ups
worse.
and downs. It really is business as usual, and honestly, the fact that they delivered during COVID is probably one of the biggest positives I've seen from them as a company. It's not that you don't expect them to, like, I guess, drop off, but this is like one company where you would have expected them to kind of fall behind. But they've kind of pulled it together, I guess, a little bit, and did the best they could given, the shutdowns in China and trying to get things shipped from overseas and then storing and then distributing, particularly during a time when local stores were closed. And I guess it's funny that we're doing a retrospective right now, but really it's kind of linked in with, COVID 2020 and just the impact that's had on a co-op experience. But probably they must be really happy that they released a new solo game in 2019, because that certainly was the right direction to go. Because imagine if they released a competitive LCG instead, just how unfortunately dead in the water that would be at this stage, because you wouldn't have been able to play in person for months.
Yeah,
So,
there were some things that came out late last year that have been affected by that. I was following Flesh and Blood for a little bit, the TCG, and yeah, it's not been doing as good as it could have.
Yeah, particularly in Australia. Like, I guess I can't really talk for the States, but I guess maybe something for our international listeners that they might want to be interested in is, often in Australia, what happens is that there's not really enough room for more than 1 to 2 other card games other than the big 3 to kind of form very strong communities. You'll often get quite small pockets of communities who play these card games, but then, if people lose interest and you get the attrition, the numbers don't grow. You just kind of slowly shrink down. And so for things like Netrunner and Thrones and L5R in the past, that's definitely been the case where it's just been attrition as you go down. Whereas the co-op games, most of these people that played these competitive ones also happen to play Arkham, or some of them played Lord of the Rings. I didn't really know that, but definitely Arkham, in my experience, is a way where you could reform those bonds. And in the case of Star Wars Destiny, a lot of people moved over to Legion. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that often the play groups are a bit more small and tight in terms of who's actually involved, and you kind of get to know these guys really well. Nationally, like it's the same people every year that you meet, and so when a new game comes along, it can be hard if not everyone's willing to move over to it, because then you kind of shrink and you're competing against the same people for time and energy, and so often card games don't seem to do as well. I find in Australia, something like Doomtown, apparently, like Doomtown is like a fantastic game, but in the States right now, you're still able to play it, and Pinebox still is supporting that game to a certain extent. But in Australia, it'd be like near impossible to get a game with someone.
Yeah, it was dead within about a year in Australia.
Yeah. Well, for a retrospective, we're off to a great start because we're reminiscing about older card games. But I guess we should start. So, it's been a year with a core set, and I guess we wanted to kind of frame this in a way that is a bit more structured and organized. But I guess just briefly, Joey, from core set to the release of Kang, what has been your thought of the first year of Marvel Champions? Do you think it's been a success for yourself and who you play with? From a deck building point of view? Well, from a deck building point of view, do you feel like it's evolved in a healthy way for yourself?
I do. I do feel that it has evolved in a very healthy way. Generally speaking, I don't feel like there's archetypes in most LCGs after about a year. It's normally like at that point you're just dealing with factions. Like you've got, so like if I was playing Spider-Man Protection, it would feel like other protection decks. But at this point in the game's life cycle, I actually feel like there is multiple different archetypes in each aspect. Besides probably Justice. Justice is probably the one that's least versatile. But like the the protection has like a defense strategy and a non-defense strategy where you either defend or you don't. And that's like the difference between Iron Man protection, which is a really strong deck, and Spider-Man protection, which is another really strong deck. And then you've got like aggression. There's like a minion focus thing, which is primarily for multiplayer or Thor players. I've been messing around with a bunch of these like reset stuff, and then there's also the Yarnborn focus decks that certain characters can do. Like most people would think of Captain America or Black Panther in that case, but I've had great success with Black Widow, and I'm sure there was at least one other character that I did quite well with that as well, but I'm blanking on what it was. And so that like there were archetypes already, and for a game at 1 year, for an LCG at 1 year, that is almost unheard of. I'm not just picking a character, picking an aspect, and that's sort of like what I'm doing at that point. I think at this point you could actually like I actually have to say what I'm attempting to do after I say that combination.
Yeah, I think that's definitely been one of the strong points in their new model of delivering cards to players and the structure of the hero packs in general. You certainly do get these stronger trait or I guess tribal approaches as well as unique deck builds a lot more rapidly than we've seen in the past. And so, yeah, I think that's a really engaging sort of reflection for you in terms of that. Unlike other LCGs, we really do have a variety of decks that we can talk and discuss, and they're wholly unique. And you can, as a deck builder, express those and play the game in unique ways. I guess the other positive is that every hero allows you to engage in the game in a slightly different way. And so far, like off the top of my head, I think we've got 13 heroes currently, with Ant-Man coming out in a few weeks. That
5 plus 6 plus 2, yeah, 13 currently.
Yeah, so yeah, like we have 13 heroes in the space of a year that all play very uniquely and in very different ways, and it's really fun at the table to see the different hero combinations at work. Yeah, so I definitely agree that over the first year, it's been a really strong success. And so like I guess this retrospective really is just going to be us talking just a little bit about what our favorite memories have been and a bit of the highlights and maybe some of the things that we feel might be able to be improved as we move forward. But we just hope that the listeners enjoy just the discussion and look back on the past year. And so I guess let's start with the easy question, Joey, and just ask, what do you think was your favorite product released in this first year of Marvel Champions?
For me, my favorite product was definitely the Black Widow pack. That was one of the only packs that I didn't know like a month ahead of time because of because of either a leak or the fact that Australia just gets things. Australia just got packs 2 weeks to a month later, because about every second pack was about 2 weeks to a month delayed. So the Black Widow one, I only knew about the cards. I found out about the cards on Monday when they were being delivered to the US stores, and I actually got it on the US release day, which was the Friday, but because of time zones, effectively it was a day earlier. So it was only like 4 days or something that I actually knew what was in the pack. Besides the official spoilers. And the reason I'm zeroing in on Black Widow specifically about this, because this also happened for me with Red Skull and Hulk, is that Black Widow, out of all those packs, I think was just the most exciting. It was I don't know about most exciting because Rise of Red Skull is pretty hype, but that particular pack had a lot of good things in it that hadn't been spoiled, and opening that pack when I got it, and there was just a lot of deck building opportunities that I was able to have on day one that I hadn't already run through my head a million times beforehand, like I had with, say, Miss Marvel or Captain America. And so I think that was probably my favorite product release. for the whole year. It helps that it's my second favorite character in the game, first being Miss Marvel.
Yeah, I kind of, I think it is like you said. That's my memory of how Black Widow kind of came about, and it's nice to know that that was a product that you really kind of gelled with and received quite well. For me, it was probably, as you hinted at the end there, I think Miss Marvel was my favorite product released, mainly because it showcased that you can design each hero in a really unique way. And that's not to criticize how fun or engaging Captain America can be. He just seemed to do a lot of things that felt very fundamental to the game quite well. Like he was just good at thwarting, good at attacking. He could ready. He discounted allies. He had draw, resource ramp. Like he just seemed to tick all the boxes for what I wanted from a hero. But Miss Marvel showed me that you can play the games in uniquely different ways just with the 15 cards and the identity ability. And I found that that was kind of cemented to me that there is a lot of promise and potential in this game. And it really floored me, honestly. I was just so impressed that they designed not only a hero that had such an interesting set of abilities, it was a hero I didn't really know much about, but it was also a hero that will only get better as the game gets bigger because of the way it's designed. It provides potential for any future attack, defense, or thwart cards to have additional value. And so that's really exciting to know that there's card types within the game that will work and function quite well with this hero, even when the game is 5, 6, 7 years old. And I think that's the sign of what a good hero design is. And I think also because I like protection, so it didn't hurt that we got a bunch of protection cards that were a ton of fun, such as Energy Barrier. But yeah, that was my favorite product release, and nothing has quite topped that. Though I'm hoping Ant-Man or Quicksilver surprise me in a similar way. So
See, with the Miss Marvel release, I didn't feel it quite as strongly, despite it being my favorite character that's in the game, and the fact that I am actually a Miss Marvel fan and have been since about like 6 months before the game came out. When I started reading her, because I was instantly hooked when I started reading her comics. The I felt most of the things that you're talking about, like the design space style thing, on more from her announcement rather than her release, because her release in Australia, she came out December 20th in the US. She came out January 17th in Australia, almost a full month later. So what had happened in that time is, if I'd go online for anything, I would be bombarded with information about, hey, I'm building this new deck, or how's this look for a Miss Marvel deck, and then I'd run through it all in my head, and I just kind of had like a billion builds that I'd already built but never played, because I just didn't have the cards yet. But the announcement doesn't have that as much, and but it was still able to convey that this character is weird, this character is different, it's going to change how you play the game. And I honestly think she delivered on the promise from the announcement very well. But that was the feeling. It was feeling similar to what you got from the actual release from the announcement. What was your favorite announcement for the last year?
I guess firstly, I think I was very impressed that they did both an article and a video format for their announcements mostly. I really enjoyed that they kind of grew as a marketing, on the marketing side a bit, because with Arkham Horror and L5R, I don't remember them doing monthly announcements for for the product that was coming out, or like showcasing it in such a direct way. And so I think that was a huge step up, just more broadly, firstly. I guess
I know they used to do monthly articles for all their LCGs, but they never used to do videos.
Yeah, the videos were new. Yeah, and it's kind of nice to see the faces behind the the design right. Like it's nice to see these designers be on camera, show how passionate they are in person, showing product that they've produced, and engage with the chat, week to week. And so as a player, you got quite close to being able to talk with these designers and such. And so, yeah, I thought that was just a huge step in the right direction. But in terms of my favorite announcement, it was probably the Kang scenario pack, primarily because I can't remember. Did they do a video for that? I can't remember. I thought they did, but
I believe they did. They were just talking about the card, so it wasn't a gameplay video.
Yeah, but the article was exciting to me because it was such a unique take on what a scenario pack could be, and it kind of reaffirmed to me that there is promise in that model of the scenario packs and hero packs being separate. Because when you design a scenario pack like they did with Kang, and it's to a caliber and quality that I think transcends the majority of what you'd want from a typical scenario in terms of month to month from, say, Lord of the Rings or Arkham, it kind of really got me excited for what they're going to do in the future. The campaign boxes are exciting, and don't get me wrong, I love what those products are doing. But for me, being able to see unique takes on memorable villains really got me excited for what the future of the game is. I was like, if they can do this for a scenario pack, like the potential and opportunities are endless, really, for what they can do. And yeah, I just loved that was the villain they chose. Yeah, he's a really interesting part of the Marvel mythos, and so I can't wait to see what they do in future. That's enough about the villains for a little bit. What was your highlight in terms of how the hero packs functioned, or just how the heroes played in general, Joey?
Yeah, I really like the more combo-y a character was, the more I was likely to like that character. So like the Miss Marvel, the Black Widow, and I know it's core set, but it still came out within the year effectively. So the Black Panther, they all feel like they've got like this high level of combo between their hero set cards, and in the case of Miss Marvel and Black Widow with cards in their aspect and basic. And Spider-Woman also kind of fits in this. It's a bit different because hers is a dual aspect combo, but still. Those characters I think worked really well. They're my like Miss Marvel's my favorite, Black Widow's my second, and Spider-Woman I've currently put in as my third favorite character to play. And they were all this same style of character, and I just think they work really well and play very differently from one another. And I think those have been really good designs. How about yourself?
Well, I mean, I don't want to beat a dead horse about Miss Marvel, so I'm thinking of other things. I think the highlight for me was probably them being able to showcase that you can really design a hero in any way that you want, and you can achieve a relatively reasonable degree of the system. So, for instance, things such as like how Iron Man works, like, he's very tech orientated. He has this hand size mechanic, like that's a really unique way to reflect what Iron Man does. But I'm sure you could do him in other ways, but you've chosen to showcase him in that particular way.
Yeah, and then you also have hand size mechanics coming through in Thor a bit as well, starting out lower, getting higher effectively. And it's no one's going to say that Thor and Iron Man feel similar in this game.
Yeah, and they achieve their goals through different ways. Like Thor has a tutor to try and you can go for that hand size increase earlier if you want. The diversity of abilities within the signature sets is close to mind-boggling. Really, what they've come up with, even just within 13 heroes, is rather phenomenal. I get a bit anxious that I'm like, can they keep sustaining this for years to come? Like, are the ideas really that endless? But I think they are, and so I just love what they did, particularly with those core set. I think I really like the core set heroes, and and that's been my highlight because of just how sturdy and stable I feel they are for a what do you call it, like a foundation for a deck. I think you can tell a player to, why don't you try this Spider-Man leadership deck, and they'll have a great time. But if they try Spider-Man protection, they'll have an equally great time, and they'll not only function in different ways, but they'll have that similar core experience that delivers quite strongly. And so that's my highlight for how the heroes were designed and functioned. If I had to pick a hero that was my highlight, I'd probably have to say it was surprisingly She-Hulk. You're the only other person I know that likes She-Hulk that I know in person. And so I remember one of the first times we played together, I'd play She-Hulk solo, but I hadn't played her in co-op. And then you played her in 2-player, and you absolutely you were dealing with everything. And I can't even remember who I was playing, but I had like this slow deck that needed to like build up a ton. But you were able to just answer all these problems we were having rather rapidly and to a strong degree of success. And I was like, well, this hero is awesome, and I love what she's doing. And some people who will listen to this show say that you carry the torch a bit too strongly, but I've always appreciated that you've quite enjoyed it, because I think she's probably the low key highlight from the heroes overall.
Yeah, I could have a whole retrospective on just She-Hulk decks that I've built in the last year.
I think we're going to save everyone the trouble and move on to maybe a little bit more of a somber topic and just talk about what did we think was something about the heroes that maybe didn't click as well in this first year, or just something that you were a little bit less impressed with.
Yeah, so for me, I think the more that a character is focused on status tokens, the less I like the character. So playing the character. So Doctor Strange, for example, is probably the pinnacle of this. He's like, he's got 3 of his cards, or 4, sorry, of his cards in his invocation deck are all focused on, or all have a status token element to them. So he's clearly the most focused on status tokens. And I just don't enjoy playing Doctor Strange most of the time because he is just too powerful. I think the status tokens might have been undervalued by the design team. So like they're saying that it's worth whatever, but it's actually worth well and truly more than that. And I think that shows through with Stunlock decks as well, particularly Captain America was very common at this, but you can there's a little bit, it shows up a little bit as well with Hawkeye and Spider-Woman, but they've Hawkeye, at least I think they've started to look by the time Hawkeye was designed, I think they'd learned a little bit that the status cards were worth a bit more than they might have been thinking. Because I think those cards have just lower numbers for the costs on them, versus, say, Heroic Strike or Crimson Bands of Cyttorak, which is kind of insanely high number as well, alongside the status token itself. And I think it's getting to a much better spot where these status cards are closer to what they should probably actually be valued at. And obviously with hero cards, they make them a little bit stronger. So like Pheromones, I don't think is going to be completely game breaking forever type thing. Whereas the Captain America, unless they start printing this, what is it that's on Ronin? This character cannot be stunned on like every villain. Stunlock is just going to shut down a lot of them forever going forward, because it's not giving up much at all for a very strong effect.
Yeah, I think Stunlock and Confuse Lock maybe kind of reared its head a little bit too much in this early phase, but I guess ideally the game seems to be at least focused primarily more on the 2 to 3 player side, and so it may just not have been planned for or accommodated as much earlier on. But as you saw, like Ronan seemed quite reflexive to that, and it was nice to see that there was a component of the game that shows like, hey, like this is a potential ability that we can print onto things. Just right, cannot be confused, cannot be stunned. If a particular villain or minion needs to be able to engage in a certain way. So I think they did a pretty good job showing that they can learn reflexively from that as the game matures. For me, I actually think the thing that I'd hoped would get better over the year was actually the the state of aggression and the dominance of leadership as an aspect. And it's probably just like most card games that FFG produce, where things go in roundabouts, in the sense of like, for a little while, one or two factions are quite strong, and then a few cards get printed, and then that shifts elsewhere. But just because of how the scenarios have been designed so far, leadership has really played well into addressing the, I guess the puzzles or problems presented by scenarios, and in particular being able to block for a bit more efficient resource expenditure than things such as defending with your hero or being able to try and rush down villains. Rise of Red Skull kind of gave me a fresh perspective on aggression. I really enjoyed being able to race down the lower health villains, and that was a fun way to engage. And often now when I see other aggression players, I feel like they're doing some really interesting things. But sometimes the other thing is that leadership kind of can just dominate, I guess, some of the discussion I see online, or dominate some of the experiences people have while playing the game. But I'd just like to see that change, maybe as the card pool gets bigger. And as a consequence of that, I think it's just a bit of a shame that we're getting another leadership pack just after we got a leadership hero in a deluxe box. But, it's a bit nitpicky, because after that we'll get aggression, protection, and then presumably justice. We still don't have that 100% confirmed. But
yeah, I would like probably justice more, because I actually feel that aggression is like, I wouldn't say it's the best, but if I was handing out a most improved trophy, it would be for aggression. I think that it's come a long way since the core set, and I'm actually quite happy with what's been happening with it, even if it's not where it's not like my most favorite aspect or anything like that at the moment. Still feel like there's some problems with it that stem from the core set, where it was easily my least favorite aspect. Whereas Justice, because Justice only had one pack, and it's not getting another one for months, and there's only like two cards for Justice players in the Rise of Red Skull because of the way Spider-Woman worked. It just all adds up. It's all added up to Justice just not having, not progressing anywhere near as much. Whereas I feel like aggression has come a long way, but it's also had more packs, so that kind of makes sense.
yeah, I think it's a fair statement to make too. And yeah, I think just a bit of a shame of that. That's how the release model's kind of shaken out. But I guess we'll see in future how it goes. But yeah, there's not too much to be complaining about this early on. I think for the most part, they've seemed to address a lot of their design intentions and vision for the game, and so it'll be exciting to see where it goes forward. I guess we talked just a bit about the heroes broadly, but part of the heroes are the signature cards that we get with each hero. And so, Joey, I was just curious about what your favorite memory or highlight of the signature cards was from the first year.
Yep, I think my favorite is probably just Embiggen, and particularly the combo with melee. Just there, we have a lot more attack events than forward events. So the Embiggen card in particular just has a lot more synergy with the current card pool. It's getting a little bit better now with like to the rescue in particular. I think because one of the things that I have a tendency to do with Miss Marvel, if I don't feel I have enough attack or board events, I start looking at the haymakers and whatnot, because they're not great at the values they are, but when you add 2 to those values, they actually start becoming pretty decent cards. So on a turn when you can't use your Embiggen or Shrink, they become decent options. And just Embiggen, it has more cards to combo off of. It has that silly combo with melee where it hits for 5 twice. There's some shenanigans where you can use, say, Relentless Assault, Embiggen Relentless Assault to do more damage to the villain, to try and kill the villain through something else, and stuff like that. It's just in it, like a single signature card. I think that's probably one of the more interesting ones, and it's just it's something to consider going forward every time they print a new attack card.
Yeah, and Big M is a really interesting signature card. And like I said earlier about Miss Marvel, I think again it's just one of those things that will get better as the game goes on, and Melee kind of was already an early example of that. For me, I think I can't go past. It's so hard. Like I have 3 in my head. I think I have to go with Split Personality, just because of how well it connects in with the overall mechanics and gameplay of what She-Hulk's trying to do. I've found form flipping to be one of the more interesting design elements of the game, and so finding ways to be able to flip an additional time is a really interesting design space for me personally. And the fact that you can lock it into signature cards means that you can balance them relatively well, because only She-Hulk can flip and draw back to hand size currently. So for me, that was just the highlight of being able to have that moment in each game at least once where you have flipped to hero form and you bash and swing and do what you need to. You've had a hand size of 6, so you can play a card or 2. You then split personality and flip back to alter ego, and then hopefully you've built your deck in such a way that you can play some cards in alter ego form that are meaningful. And yeah, I felt like it was a card that rewarded good deck building, good sequencing, and ticked all the boxes for what I wanted from a signature card. As always, I guess we should just quickly touch on maybe something that we felt fell a bit short of what we had hoped in the signature card department. Was there anything that came to mind for you, Joey, for the signature cards?
Well, we have a whole, what is it, a 1-2 hour episode on it, but everything in Hulk's signature set except for Hulk Smash and is it Limitless Strength with the 3 physical resources on it? Like, just everything else in that pack, in that hero set, is just like he's already a lower resource character, and they're all sitting at, roughly, they're either just like roughly what you would expect from like an aspect card, when hero cards are normally slightly better, or they're sitting, or in the case like there's that one, the one that gives the +1 attack, where I actually think it's lower than what an aspect card would give for the same cost. And the just that whole combination has just made that whole signature set just a write-off. I have not played Hulk since we recorded the episode about talking about him, and I don't have any plans to play him going forward, because I just do not like so much of his signature set.
Yeah, I feel like you're someone that would just play the ally form moving forward, and yeah, you're happy to let the signature hero stay in the binder for a little bit longer.
I was talking with someone a few weeks back, and I kept referring to a Hulk deck, and I completely forgot that the Hulk hero pack, the Hulk hero, actually existed. And I was talking about who was it? I think it was a Black Panther deck or something, or I had built one based around the Hulk ally, and I just kept referring to it as a Hulk deck, and I completely forgot that it was that there was a hero Hulk.
Yeah, Yeah, it's interesting when you can have those sort of conversations and forget that they might mean something a little bit different because of how this game functions. Um, for me, though, I'd say the one lesson I feel that might come from this year of Marvel Champions uh, is maybe in a similar vein to your thoughts on Hulk, but it's really just Doctor Strange and how he was designed. Um, I quite like when they introduce heroes that are maybe a bit stronger or quite unique and powerful in their own way. And ultimately, the goal of this game is to have fun and feel quite heroic and feel like you've got a good handle on things. I personally feel, and it's a personal opinion because I don't want to state it as it's not fact. It's just this is my opinion about it. Is that I think he goes a bit too far and is a bit too good for what is currently released in the game as a considerable challenge. I think he invalidates a lot of what villains are trying to do and achieve in the current scenario pool that we have. And I ultimately just found that his invocations bend or break the rules a bit too efficiently for their cost. And for me, that makes the experience of him unfun because he's just too good at what's going on for a scenario. But for the game's health, I don't mind that he exists. But for me personally, I found that was probably the weakest thing that we got this year was a hero that felt like he hadn't been tuned as well as I personally liked. But I can see that, a lot of people engage with what he did and really enjoy what he provides with his invocation deck and signature set. But I felt because of what the invocation cards can do, and particularly at lower player counts, I personally just didn't find him as fun to play. And it's a similar experience I had with an Arkham investigator called Rex back in the day, Rex Murphy, is that when you play in a co-op game and someone plays an element that often invalidates a lot of what's going on with a scenario or a quest or an adventure, the co-op experience can become a little bit less about the overcoming of a challenge together and working together, and more it becomes a narrative experience, which for some is fine. They might just love that or love what that hero is doing, but for me it really deters from what I'm wanting from these games personally. And so that was my take on the signature cards. I'd say in particular the Rings of Ragabond, and even the attack, because they're specials and they're not played, so they get around so many of the of the scenario's abilities to try and prevent you. For instance, something that we realized just yesterday, I don't really want to go too much down this rabbit hole, but Kang has a obligation that prevents you from playing hero specific cards, but because it's an action to resolve the ability, you're not actually playing the card. Yeah. So again, it just you get around all these mechanics that scenarios throw at you, and to me, that's a bit of a shame. And that's really all I have to say about it. Yeah. So moving on to maybe something a bit more positive is the aspect cards that they designed. There's obviously 4 aspects in the game, though the designers have always admitted that they initially tried 5 and that didn't really work out for them. And, unfortunately from the conception of the game. But Joy, what has been your highlight for the aspect cards and basic cards?
I think my highlight, it's definitely going to be the Yarnborn. I actually don't think there's that many good cards, good aggression cards in the Thor pack. You mainly pick it up for Thor and some of the basic cards, but the Yarnborn in particular unlocks this somewhat interesting deck style where you're just focusing on just triggering attacks and then throwing resources at a 1 for 2, which is actually a pretty good exchange just in general. That's pretty much the cap for non-conditional damage in a hero set. So the ends that one card, one unique weapon card in just in the Thor pack has probably kept aggression, kept me actually playing aggression for I think 3 or 4 months of this game, because I didn't really like aggression out of the core set. The only card I would say that I actually liked is Relentless Assault. Um, Maybe chase them down sometimes, but it's somewhat situational. And the uh, and the next time we got like a proper influx of aggression cards was the Hulk pack down the line, which I think was a very good pack for aggression cards, and I think that's justified my purchase of the Hulk pack, despite what I've said about the Hulk hero himself. But the Thor pack, like Yarnborn on its own, may have justified the purchase of that pack, just because of how much fun that can be with a variety of heroes. And at this point, I'm pretty sure I've tried it with everyone except Hawkeye and Spider-Woman, and that's only because those are the two newest characters.
Yeah, I think Yarnborn did a lot for aggression overall. None the least because it's a weapon as well, and you got Mean Swing, I think, in the same pack.
It was in the same pack, yeah.
Yeah. I think those two cards did a lot for opening up aggression in a different avenue of approaching the game. And so as a result, you get a really exciting way to build moving forward. And I think that is a really great choice from yourself. I probably have to go a slightly different route and say it's really tough. There's like 4 cards in my head that I think kind of reflect the highlight of the game. I'm gonna kind of do a cop out and probably just stick with Energy Barrier. I think Energy Barrier is just such a refreshing card for protection. It's probably too flexible at what it does for its cost, and because of its the fact that it has a tech trait, it really elevated one of my favorite core set heroes, which was Iron Man, and created a very fun and engaging way to play that hero that previous to that had been kind of relegated to Justice as a primary build. And the Miss Marvel pack with Energy Barrier kind of really opened him up to protection, which I thought was a huge positive. And I think Energy Barrier solves a lot of problems that some heroes have with dealing with certain elements of scenarios. It's a great way to remove tough off villains. It's very flexible at being able to aid in removing drones in Ultron or dealing that additional damage where needed while mitigating the damage you take yourself. In heroes like Black Panther, you become, you have Retaliate 1 and then you get the Energy Barrier triggers on top of that. There's just a lot of flexibility with what's going on there, and I found it to be a really engaging mechanic. And I think the selection of resource type for the card also has meant that it sees a lot of play, in things like Captain Marvel, Iron Man, and to a lesser extent Thor. But that's probably my highlight. Is there anything about the aspect pool that you would like to see improved in the future, or something that didn't quite gel with you in this first month?
I've already mentioned it, but it's the Justice card pool. The Justice needs something that's not just like this is good numbers. It needs some fancy effect. The closest they have is like Agent Coulson, but on a enters playability with like one particular ally. It's not you're not building a deck around that. If it was something that could stay around forever and could trigger it relatively consistently, that would be a different matter. But Justice just doesn't have anything like that. Like we have examples of that in every other aspect. Like we have strength in numbers. We have like you could build a really strong strength in numbers deck. We have a Yarnborn. We have even protection has unflappable, but also Nova. I don't mess around with Nova that much, but like they're engine cards that lead to interesting deck builds, and Justice just doesn't have any of them.
Yeah, I think, like you said, one of the problems is just it hasn't had the same amount of volume of cards being delivered, which is a bit of a shame. And because Spider Woman was 50-50, it didn't really help that you got half a pack rather than full pack of cards.
Yeah, and we're still months away from the next Justice release.
Yeah, so you're getting just 3 more cards, which means there's a bit of a wait there. For me, I'm going to take a different tack and say that the changing to how defense works, love it or leave it. The reality is that it unfortunately meant that a card such as Warning, which I thought was a really interesting 0-cost basic card, became something that I really just couldn't justify ever running in my builds currently. And it was a real shame because I had the defense keyword and I was just really keen to try and see what it could do as a way to mitigate some damage coming to the table, particularly in multiplayer. But because of how the defense ruling changed and it meant that you could no longer play it unless you were the target of the attack, it kind of prevented you from reducing damage output to other heroes that might have appreciated
And also,
the additional buffer.
I'm pretty sure Warning doesn't mention from an attack either, so it forced it to be from an attack now as well, whereas previously it could have been used for indirect damage.
Or other triggers of damage. It was actually a really interesting card for where the meta was going at the time, and
the reason for that change was clearly so that we couldn't use Indomitable to ready off of some of these effects. Like Warning should not be able to trigger Indomitable, which is what was able to happen previously.
Right. Yeah. There were. Look. Yeah. Like I said, I'm okay with the ruling. It's just a shame that these cards got caught in the crossfire. Is what I've always said. But that's probably the part of the retrospective where I think that the aspect in basic cards sadly lost a bit of love. Is just that the ruling kind of impacted how some of the defense cards worked, both in protection and in particular Warning. And so that's my thoughts on that. Well, we kind of wrapped up all the hero side of the previous year, and it's time to move on to the bad guys, or the villains of the game, and really the scenarios that we're all engaging with and playing all the time. And so, Joey, what was the thing that was most memorable for you about the scenarios that we got this year?
Of the scenarios, we've got Kang. Kang is the probably most unique out of any scenario that we've got. Just such a weird way for everything to go. Three stages, splitting the party up. Although I've only played it solo, so it's always been just one zone, which has lost a little bit, but it's still interesting because it's a random zone each time. And just the way it interacts with changing between the different stages is made for some really weird gameplay that is quite enjoyable. And I think relative to the other scenarios, I think that's probably the highlight at the moment.
Yeah, I would tend to agree that I think the scenario packs have been a really strong highlight for the game. For me personally, I think Zola is the one that really surprised me the most and is probably my highlight. I didn't really expect Zola to be my favorite scenario from the Rise of Red Skull box, but it very rapidly became the one that I returned to the most frequently. And I really enjoyed what that scenario brought to the villain and minion mechanics that we'd seen in previous scenarios and how they were built upon from previous sets. It also showed me that my concern that a campaign box might dilute the quality of the experience compared to what the scenario packs were doing was ungrounded and really unfounded. It was not the case that the campaign box scenarios were of any lesser pedigree than what has been produced in the scenario packs. And I was thoroughly impressed with particularly what Zola could do. I guess just to the other side of the equation, Joey, is there anything that you felt the scenarios made you feel was lacking or that could be improved on as the game moves forward?
Risky Business is the one I'm going to go with. Its mechanic of flipping the villain as well between two different forms seemed really interesting from the announcement, but the actual gameplay of it was just way too easy to work out and game so hard. And then once you had it worked out and were gaming it, I don't think there's a fix. I've seen people suggest various things like hazard icons on the criminal enterprise side, shenanigans, typically with the criminal enterprise side, because that's the side where if you can force people to force people to actually go and flip him into the other side as often as possible, that's probably the biggest way to make it threatening. Because when it does flip every turn, it does a lot of damage, but just that whole scenario doesn't really function like it's supposed to. And unlike, say, Wrecking Crew, which I still think is one of my favorite scenarios, I don't play it on Expert anymore. If I'm going to play it, I play on Heroic 1. There's no easy fix to Risky Business. It doesn't fire off unless you play into it poorly. And if you're playing into it poorly, you're going to lose. So the gameplay is always going to be to play them to adjust the mechanic, adjust your playstyle so that the mechanic isn't going to kill you, and then it just doesn't really function like I want it to.
Yeah, I'd say there's a lot that they probably learnt from those early scenarios, and it's kind of nice how candid and honest Michael was about him feeling that while the scenario can be still quite fun and you can engage with a brand new mechanic, that he kind of does wish himself that he could have gone back and maybe addressed a few things from that scenario. I am going to take a slightly different tact and say that I actually felt that the modular sets given in the campaign box, the Rise of Red Skull, were not as unique or engaging as I had personally hoped. I was also rather surprised we only got 3 modular sets, but I can see because of all the campaign cards and what else was going on that it may have just been a bit problematic to do any more than that. I just found that Hydra Assault and Hydra Patrol could have been altered just relatively slightly to provide something a bit more specific and unique, and that the Weapon Masters modular, which was really interesting, could have perhaps found a way to provide maybe one additional weapon to ensure that was going off on all cylinders a bit more consistently.
Weapon Master rarely, outside of the crossbones scenario, it rarely actually fires like it should.
Yeah, they feel a little bit more insular than what I'd hoped, I guess is maybe the best way for me to describe it. And that's okay. It's, it's early days still, and there's a lot to learn, and maybe, there are people obviously that probably loved what was given there, and I just found that for me that fell just a little bit short of my expectations of what I wanted from a modular set. But yeah, we should probably just move on to modular sets and talk probably a little bit more about what was our highlight of them for the year. And so why don't you start, Joey, and just share what your highlight was of the modular sets?
My highlight for modular sets is Tombstone. I'm pretty sure I've said this before. Tombstone's my favorite modular set. It doesn't always fire off like it's supposed to, which is good because Tombstone's modular set is brutal when it actually fires. But just the way it works with the doubling when revealed effects and the not being able to flip. If you happen to get them all coming up at the wrong, at the exact right time, like particularly if you get both of them at once, it just creates a situation that's super threatening and just really interesting. And sometimes you can deal with it, sometimes you can't. Turns when you can't, uh, it's showing you the power of that modular set. Whereas the and its synergy within itself, rather than say, like we were talking about just before, Weapon Master requiring synergy from the villain himself, just making it significantly more modular. And I really like that modular set just in general.
Yeah, I
But
think
anyone from the Green Goblin pack were good. They were all quite good modular sets for different reasons.
yeah, I think it's one of those sleeper modular sets. Like, I don't see as much discussion about that modular set. Um, and I guess it's a bit of a shame because I think, like you said, something like media coverage is a really interesting ability to provide a villain, and it can be quite deadly. So it's it's rather interesting to think that that card goes under the radar a bit more than what you'd expect. But
Yeah,
uh,
I've had
like,
it flip on turn one on mutagen, and then get both advances, and then
yeah,
it's started shuffling again.
it's why the order matters as well. Like, some people don't care about the particulars, and you can say they're all random cards. But in a way, like the order for me does matter as to like when I got this encounter card and when I drew it and in what order do I flip them, is an important thing to me because like the difference between flipping media coverage first and last is dramatic. Um, but it's okay. For me, I guess in a similar vein, my highlight would probably be the Ronin modular set, and I mean it's pretty easy low picking fruit really. Seeing a designer within 2 to 3 weeks be able to provide free print on demand content for the community and design things that directly address some of the concerns from people about how scenarios are functioning and what players are doing in terms of their play patterns to mitigate scenario challenges. And so Ronin was really a breath of fresh air, and it kind of showcased really to me. I don't know about for you, but it showcased to me that like if they wanted to, they could make this game a lot harder, and there seems to be a clear intention to ensure it doesn't ever become, super hard. Like, I think Ronin kind of really reinforced like there are reasons for why overkill, and piercing are not as prevalent as some might like, and similarly, why boost effects can sometimes be a bit more less concentrated again than some might like, because when you do give everything a boost ability and you do create everything as a way to directly answer chump blocking, for instance, the game challenge becomes significantly harder. But it's great because it's a modular set. You can choose if you want to engage with it in that way. And I think it ticks all the boxes of what a modular set should do. And yeah, that's my thoughts on that. We're reaching the end here. And I guess just as we close out, Joey, do you want to just share maybe something about the modular sets that you're hoping might be improved as the game goes on, or something that you thought fell a bit flat?
I'd like to see more modular sets that aren't focused on minions. We have a decent number of minion focused ones at the moment, like that have a large number of minions in them. I'd really like to see more that are minionless or at very least minion light, and maybe not just with like one mini boss and then minion light. Um, maybe like a side scheme focus modular set or something where you get like a bunch of side scheme, like instead of a bunch of minions, um, or something like that. Just we just seem to be getting a lot of these minion focused ones, and on some characters, I just don't want a minion focused one. Like Rhino doesn't really need. Well, he does if you're playing Thor, if you want to make it so that you're not burning through the deck so quickly. But like the Rhino scenario, I kind of want things closer to risky business, under attack, um, even weapon master. Although he doesn't have any weapons, so he doesn't combo particularly well with that one. Um, whereas those options are significantly more limited versus if I'm playing Zola and looking for a minion heavy modular set, I've got so many options. If I'm looking to put in like um, a mini boss into there just to see if it'll come out and wreck me, there's so many options. There's the Ronin, or everything except for Goblin gimmicks in the Goblin pack and the Murdoch in the core set. All have like a mini bossy style modular set, but um, we don't have a lot that are focusing on other things, um, that are focusing on other aspects of what the modular set could include, and I think that would be an interesting way to go.
Yeah, I tend to agree, and I think I'm probably just going to share the same thoughts on what I felt was the weakness of modular sets in the first year. It might just be that they needed to play a bit safer and really kind of make sure there's some memorable minions and characters that you can add to your experience regardless of what scenario you're playing. But in future, it would be great to see maybe a bit more variety in terms of what a modular set can do to alter the game experience. So like you said, something like a side scheme focus modular set, not only does it create a very unique way to engage with Red Skull, because then his actual deck is a lot thinner, which in most cases actually makes it a lot harder to play because he's more consistently going to find his own set of cards. But yeah, you could do anything really. You could have a mix of attachments and treacheries.
With the permanent and setup keywords that you have now, you even have the possibility of including like a new rule into a modular set. You could just put, you slap permanent and setup on a environment card and have it have a trigger, have it have whatever the trigger is on it.
Yes, certainly. Yeah. There's just a lot of ways they could take the modular set direction, and hopefully we see a bit more variety in the Galaxy's Most Wanted box. I guess as the next product, we might see things. I guess that's the one thing that it would be nice to see, is just see what they can come up with in the different sort of, I guess, format, and I don't know what you call it, like it's sort of like a different part of the Marvel universe that we probably really haven't seen much of. Like I feel like this first year has been a little bit more grounded on Earth and focused around what's going on there, and going somewhere different in the Marvel universe might mean that we get a different array of modular set experiences. So yeah, something to look forward to in the future. That's about it for our retrospective. Joey, do you have any final thoughts or reflections you wanted to leave before this episode wraps up?
Oh, I know we were talking about like highlights and lowlights. So you might, I don't know how well it came across, but I've been really happy with the product for the last year. Besides delays and whatnot, but whatever that they happen. But the stuff that's actually come out has been very good, just in general. And there's currently no product that I've purchased that I feel was a complete waste of my money. There's always something being gained from each pack, from each pack, just in general. And like in some cases it's smaller. Like as much as I like Thor, I normally use it's the enhanced physique and the Yarnborn more often than I use Thor himself. Whereas say the Doctor Strange pack, I significantly more likely to use the protection cards in there than anything else in that pack. But there's always something in any pack that I've bought so far.
Yeah, I'd have to agree that it's probably just, despite maybe how we talk sometimes, I think we're often relatively generous and positive with our perspective on the game. But it's because we both tend to enjoy it. I definitely think for a living card game, they've done a lot right, where in the past there's been a few more additional challenges, and certainly the state of the game 1 year in is rather extraordinary for the card pool that we have. I'm still a little bit concerned about the delivery of how scenarios are being met, but I guess we'll see over time how that develops. The idea of not being able to have a new scenario until March is becoming a reality. And so I'm curious to see what the community comes up with in the 6 months between now and when that pack is released, and how we continue to enjoy the game with all the modular sets that we have and all the scenarios that we have. And yeah, I'm rather impressed with the first year and can't wait to see what's ahead in the future. So thank you everyone for listening to this retrospective episode.